questions that are being asked, I'd like to mostly address, so this is my preference, is questions that affect how you walk. Questions about living this out. What he's always told me is, tell them that if they're doing what they're supposed to be doing, they'll be where they're supposed to be. But you need a teacher to teach you what it is you need to be doing. All right, so before we start zone one, but as a part of getting into the zone meetings, I want to say a few things in general to everybody. First of all, I really want to encourage you to come to any of the ones that you can come to. Okay, whatever zone you're in, if you can go to two of them, the one you're in plus another one, you're going to get so much out of it. There's just different questions that people ask. There's different things that I just get inspired to just start sharing or whatever, and they're not really recorded. Well, this one is, because we're doing it as part of our live Shabbat service. But otherwise, they're not really recorded. So if you can add a zone 2 or zone 3 into the mix, because the zone 1's already available, that would be really, really good. I'm proud of it. Was it Donna Stevens? She said went to all 3. That's very exciting. She's over in New Zealand, so she managed to get to all 3. I'm not that impressed. I do all 3. No, but it's not in a time zone challenge for me. Okay, for some people, when we're doing the zone meeting, it could be like 3, 4 in the morning where they live. It could be really tough. Okay, so, like right now, if you're in the Philippines, it's 3 in the morning. So to be in zone 1 live, now, of course, this is recorded because we're broadcasting it that way, but if they wanted to be in live, it'd be really challenging, right? But there's so much good stuff. People ask stuff that may be the thing you wanted to ask, but you don't like to get on a mic. And so you get some answers to things that you really needed answers to, okay? And occasionally, a scripture reference is asked about. Normally, it's about all these other things that are still walk-related, but occasionally somebody actually asks about a verse, which is fine. At least we get that in there, right? Speaking of that, in case one of you asks about a verse, let me have my Bible ready. There we go. In case, you never know. And that being said, something that came up that I want to just kind of throw out there, so in case it doesn't get a chance, I don't know what the questions are going to be. By the way, that's another thing that we do different than everybody else. We don't screen anything. I've been in ministries where people could submit questions and they would get screened, and your question either got read or didn't get read, depending on if they felt like reading it or not. Okay, but I let you ask your question, and then you'll see I make the effort, if you're new at all this watching, to make sure I answer the question. Like, I'll ask you, did that answer your question? And the person only said, well, not exactly. Good, so I'll make another effort to try to answer the question, which is a lot easier to do when you have a back and forth than you have if someone just writes something out, right? But anyway, I want to talk about real quickly this idea of awareness. I talked about it this morning, okay? Awareness. And part of your growth is going to be in developing all of the attributes that you need to develop in your system, which means that you have to have a heightened awareness. For example, let's just take a mundane sort of example. Most of you have learned how to drive a car, okay? So if you learn how to drive a car, you remember, hopefully, a little bit that in the beginning, which foot is the pedal, which pedal is this, and my hands are here, and I'm supposed to check the mirrors, and what's everybody doing? So there's so much to be aware of, it's overwhelming. And now you drive your car and you get home, and you don't even know how you got there. Like you were just thinking about other things and you went from your work to your home or your home to your work without even really thinking about it, okay? When you get to a high enough level of accomplishing, those things get to be what we call, back in the martial arts day, we call it the no-mind state, where you don't need to think about it, you just have an automatic reaction to things, which means that you are able then to pay attention to everything else because you're not distracted by having to pay attention to the things that would normally have distracted you in the beginning. All right, so I want you to have a much higher awareness of what's going on inside of you. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Okay? And then I want you to have an awareness of what's going on around you. Because some of you will have this thing happen one of two directions. You'll either be very distracted by something that's going on inside, that you're missing everything happening around you, or a lot, because you're upset about something or you're very excited about something, whatever it is, but you got something inside happening that's got so much control of your thoughts and your emotions and whatever's going on that you will be oblivious to other things. Anybody ever have that happen? And you end up missing things and people say, by the way, blah, 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 and you'll be like, what? They said, yeah, they had said something and you didn't respond, and then they're like, I didn't hear you because your mind had you distracted. Or someone will say, did you see that? And you're like, see what? Because you're just, you're distracted. It can go the other way. You're not paying attention to how you're doing because you're so distracted by something outside, okay? And that's also not the way to go. You want to have balance where you can have an awareness of both to a certain degree, okay? Because that will allow you to, I didn't say this morning, so you get a little added bonus for it. That'll allow you to say something like, you see something happening, you can go, that's interesting. I wonder if, this is an inside thought, I should be involved in that. Outside thought was, I see something. It got my attention. Inside thought then says, I wonder if we should be involved in that. Is that something I need to go ahead and do something about or be involved in? Or is that something I can ignore because it really shouldn't involve me, right? So you have to have an inside and outside awareness. Now, granted, if you practice this, you can do it without a lot of conscious effort, okay? It'll start to happen more automatically. I'll give you an example. If you're in any kind of public relations, sales, or anything like that, you probably have learned some skills about how to read the people you're interacting with so that you can adjust to them in terms of making sure that you're communicating better. Because the more I learn to adjust to you, the more I communicate in the way you receive, the better you're gonna receive it. Instead of just talking to you whatever which way I wanna talk to you. And that's why you'll hear me say things louder, say things quieter, say things faster, say things a little slower, because everybody's different. I'll use 15 examples of different things just because one of them will make sense to you. And so that adjusting to people, when I first learned how to do it, I had to think about it. I had to think about how were they talking, what's their body language, how were they receiving my information. Now I do it without thinking. I automatically do it because of practice. It became something just like driving and you go home and you don't know how you got there, right? Because you've done it so much, it doesn't require a lot of paying attention. Were you still paying attention to the cars on the road? Yes. Were you still safe? Yes. But you weren't paying attention to the things that you really didn't need to pay that much attention to. You knew where to make the right turn, you knew where the stop sign was, you knew where this is, you knew where that is, and you just kind of went. This walk is kind of that way. To let this mind be in you, okay, means that at some point you have it so practiced in you that you start acting Yeshua-like without having to think about what would Yeshua do? How would he handle this? Because you've already kind of practiced that. Does that make any sense? All right, so this is your little mini sermon for the day, all right? I want you to be much more aware, okay? I may be doing a teaching on slumber and sleep, slumber, sleep, and awake and aware, okay? Something like that. Because there's a lot of verses about those who slumber or things that happen when they were asleep or slumbering, and there's a lot of verses about wake up. Anybody want to hear that one? Okay. So, well, you just heard it. Now just play this back later. Okay. That was quick and easy. No, I like the idea of doing that. So we'll see what we can do to put that together here soon.
I'm wondering about, so I learned to be submissive to my husband, which is a new thing for me, being submissive to anybody. But I'm wondering how to respectfully submit without suppressing my own opinions and thoughts. And it's kind of a two-parter because I have a habit of like holding stuff in. And sometimes I don't even want to. It just like, I end up lashing out later because my feelings were still there. I just submitted in the moment.
Okay, so good question, and good to see you over there at Odessa. I didn't know you were over in Odessa now. Okay, you just visiting, or are you going there on a regular basis?
Well, we live in Amarillo, so it's a couple hours.
Okay, all right.
So, but I come out here once a month. That way we can fellowship.
Beautiful. All right. So, and I also like the people who get on the zone meetings are people I know. So that's kind of nice. All right. So here's the thing when it comes to submission, and it fits into something I said earlier. So some of you guys who missed the zone meetings are getting a little bit of a bonus that you normally wouldn't get. So one of the things that came up in so just pay attention, Florencia. I will get to submission in a second, but this leads into it. We talked about belief and faith in zone 2 today and what belief and faith is, okay? It's not some holding on to some idea that you kind of hope maybe might work out. You have no evidence to it. There's no reason to believe it. It's just what you'd rather would like to see happen and some sort of miraculous thing, okay? So belief is not that. That's not what it talks about in here. You know, when Paul says in Hebrews 11, he says, belief or faith is the evidence of something not seen. So there's evidence. So what's the evidence? So if I'm asking the Father to do something, I can believe he can do it because I've already seen in Scripture and in other people's lives and my own life him doing those things. That doesn't mean he will, by the way. It just means that I believe he can. I know people that have been healed. We read it in verses about people being healed. If I have something that needs healing, I can pray with belief that he can do it. Maybe he won't, maybe he will, but I can certainly have faith or belief that it's something he can do, all right? So when it comes to submission to the Father, we submit because we trust that that's the right thing to do. We don't always agree with him. Can everybody at least be honest and admit that you don't always agree with everything the Father's told you to do or told you not to do? Okay, every one of us has had that. Thank you for you shyly like this, all right? We don't always like what he says, but we come to trust that he's right, even if you can't see it, okay? Now, a little bit different with husbands. Husbands still can be wrong. Abba's not going to be wrong. The Father's not going to be wrong. So that's a little bit, again, part of our belief is that we know he's not wrong, okay? Even if we can't see it, we know he's not wrong. So, though with husbands, you should have a relationship that you know that what he's done in the past. In other words, if there was a situation that came up where you didn't agree with him, if you had allowed it to go his way, you know that it worked out the last time. Or you know that it didn't work out, but yet he handled it or not. So, men, if your wives are not submitting, part of it may be you. Maybe they can't trust you because you haven't shown them that you can handle it, either that you'll be right or if you're wrong, you'll handle it. Okay? That's part of what we trust with God. No matter what happens, we know it'll be handled right. Okay? But we don't trust people that way. And I get that. But if you're married, this is why, for all of you that are not married, please don't get married unless you're going to do this. All right? Don't get married unless you're going to vet the person you're marrying to the point where you can decide, can I trust them to do two things? One, make good decisions most of the time. Two, handle it when they make a bad decision so that you are going to be okay even if something bad happens. Bad meaning undesired. Okay, doesn't mean really it has to be that bad, but still undesired. Okay? That's the first half of my answer to you, Florencia. The other half is you should have the ability to share your opinions. However, sharing them is not imposing them. Sharing them is not trying to put yourself in authority and dictate them. So husbands, you should hear your wives. Let them share their opinions. But ladies, you should be able to accept if he says, I appreciate that, but we're not doing that. Or I appreciate that, but we're going to do this other thing. Okay? You have to allow for that. That's the way leadership works in the ministry and everywhere else, okay? In any company, if somebody has an idea, they bring it to a supervisor or somebody up top, the person might say, hey, thank you, that's a great idea. Or they'll say, you know what, we're not doing that, okay? I get lots of people suggesting all kinds of things about how we should do things here, and I have to say often enough, hey, that's great, but that's not what we do, okay? We don't do that. And so the submission struggle is coming from two places. One, it could be that you don't trust him. Okay, whoever you're struggling to submit to is because you don't trust them. You don't believe they can handle it. That if it goes wrong, they can handle it. Okay? I tell everybody that I work with that comes under me in any way, whether it's my family or in the ministry, whatever goes on, it'll get handled. Don't worry about it. It's handleable, and I know I will be able to be up to that challenge, okay? I don't know in advance what it's going to look like, but I have confidence. Now, why do I have confidence? It's called belief, evidenced belief, because I know I have a history now of things going wrong and handled, wrong and handled, wrong and handled, okay? So if you have a relationship, if you're married more than just a few years, some things must have already gone wrong, and you saw how he handled it. Did he handle it? Guys, don't get all upset at your wives for not submitting if you did not handle the problem, okay? She has to be able to trust you can handle it. All right? So I tell my wife all the time, look, if anything goes wrong, don't worry about it. I will take care of it. It will be fine. You will not suffer, okay? Or maybe not long term, because sometimes you make a mistake that sets you back a little bit, right? But I will take care of it. I will fix it. I will make it right. Now the question is, does the wife believe that? Does she have faith? She shouldn't have belief and faith without evidence. Does that make any sense? Okay, Paul isn't saying faith is having belief in something there's no evidence for. It's saying that faith is the evidence. In other words, you believe this thing because you have reasons, is absolutely doable and able to work out. Okay? You're trusting and believing. This whole walk we're doing is because we trust and believe in an eternity. We believe in a resurrection. We believe in all kinds of things. Why? Well, because we have all kinds of evidence that's here in Scripture, and we also have evidence in our own lives of so many of the things he said playing out exactly like he said. So faith is in something that hasn't happened yet that you know there's evidence that it can happen or that it will happen. Does that make any sense? Okay, it's not just belief in something that nobody's ever heard of before and there's no evidence about, okay? You don't believe in an invisible God because you have no evidence. Does that make any sense? You believe in an invisible God because you have evidence. You have experienced in your life things that are evidence that he exists. And this is a really important concept. So then, because of that evidence, we have built up a level of trust in him. Okay, faith and belief. And because of that, we're willing to say, I will submit to you. Look, the same thing we see with Israel, right? Israel didn't have much going on in their vertical relationship. All of a sudden, they end up as slaves in Egypt. And then in order to get them to the place where they would covenant, he impressed them with just who and what he is so that they could believe whatever he says, he means it and it will take place. He brought them out as a nation out of a land. Nobody's ever heard of that before. He did it with signs and wonders. Unbelievable. Well, we believe it, we know, but I mean, it would be otherwise unbelievable. He parted the sea. He brought them to Sinai. They heard his voice. I mean, all of these things that should make it relatively easy to trust and believe and submit. Yet still, Israel struggled with it, and we do. Now we get to the other part of this, Florencia. And this is for all of you people out there, especially the blue side of you. You have a really brutal time with, well, we'll say one thing first, maybe I'll say two things. You have a hard time with allowing that something could go wrong that should have been prevented, okay? One of the big potential weak spots in a blue, okay, is allowing that not everything is preventable. Allowing that just because you think it was preventable, you have to sometimes allow people to mess up, allow them to learn from a lesson of making a mistake. More growth comes out of failure and mistakes than out of success. Because you might have had a success and you don't even know how you got there. It just happened to work out. So you didn't learn anything, okay? You have a success after a failure because you learned something and made an adjustment. Now you learned something, okay? So all of you with that sort of blue-sided, those who don't know what I'm talking about, we did a personality test called the color code, and red, white, yellow, and blue are the four colors. Anyway, so the blue-sided people, okay, nothing should ever go wrong in your mind. Everything should that's aware of, you should be prevented. And so if you're the wife and you think, uh-oh, something bad is gonna happen, my husband's making a decision that's gonna lead to some sort of problem, it's hard for you to keep your mouth shut. Okay, by keep your mouth shut, I don't mean don't say anything, but be respectful. Don't try to usurp. Don't try to tell him what to do. Share your concern. Say, I'm a little concerned that this might go wrong. And let him be the hero and take away your fear. Don't say things like, what are you doing, you idiot? Don't you know it's gonna blow up in your face? Some people are smiling because that's the way they talk to their husband sometimes, okay? All right? And use your own version of that. But I mean, you say certain things like, what are you doing? Instead say, I understand that you want to do this, I'm nervous. Okay, not that I don't trust you, I'm just nervous because it looks to me like it's risky this way or that way, whatever it is, and let him explain. Now, if you're not satisfied with the explanation, well, that's just too bad. That's the way it works. But I'm just saying is you have to learn to trust, okay? You picked him, okay? Unless there was a shotgun involved, nobody made you get married to him, all right? They don't even do that anymore, okay? It's not like a thing, okay? But nobody made you pick him. Only problem is nobody told you the right way to go about picking either, all right? And by the way, we're kind of screwed on both sides of it. You got ladies feel like you got men that don't know how to stand up and be men, and we got ladies that don't know how to be submissive wives and trust the men. So we got it on both sides. So Florencia, if your husband is doing something or wanting to do something that you don't trust for whatever reason, or you're afraid, there's nervousness, something like that, you should, yes, be able to share your concerns, but ask for help. Men like to help. They'll offer help even when you don't want it sometimes, okay? Like if you start complaining about something in your life, they'll try to give you a solution when all you wanted to do was vent. Men are ready to give a solution, okay? And so ladies, if you don't want a solution, please tell us up front, I just need to vent. Because otherwise I'm only listening to what I have, enough to hear what to give you an answer. Well, just do this and just do that. And you look at me like, why? I don't need your answer. I just want to vent, okay? So if you come to him needing, I'm scared, I'm nervous by this decision, I need help feeling better about it, reassure me, that's different than saying, I don't trust you, I think this is gonna blow up in your face, I think this is a bad idea, and you start attacking him for his decision. You get what I'm saying? Okay, let's not do that, okay? So then the last part of this, Florencia, is that you have to then have peace to trust that it's his decision to make and that he's gonna have to handle it if it blows up, not you, okay? And some of you ladies are like, yeah, but every time it blows up, I have to fix it. No, you choose to fix it. You can let him fix it. You can leave it on his plate, okay? But see, your need to fly in and rescue, like you helicopter moms with your kids, okay? Got to fly in and rescue. Don't fly in and rescue your husband. How's he ever going to grow up and take, on his hind legs with his back straight if you're going to always go rescue him, okay? And guys, you should be able to read. Remember I talked about that, like communication, I learned how to read people. Okay, like were they receiving what I'm saying? I'm reading all of you now. I'm looking at faces to see how this is kind of being received, right? That I'm adjusting what I'm saying, knowing that I'm reaching or not reaching people. Well, you know what? Guys, read your wives. If what you're doing or wanting to do is scaring them and making them upset, part of that is your fault. You have not either A, earned their trust, or B, done your job to reassure them. Hey, I get it, I get you're upset, I need you to trust me, I've got this, all right? That's on you guys. Read your wives. Read her voice, read her body language, you know her, how she is normally this way, and then you can see when she gets upset, you know those things. If you've been married for a while, you know exactly what all that looks like. Read it, okay? Also learn, maybe she only gets this upset when she's afraid. So next time when she's upset, stop listening to the words coming out of her mouth. Realize she's afraid is what you're hearing, okay? All right? I only get sort of loud when I'm not talking about like normal, like a frustration with like a password or something, but my wife knows only if she hurts my feelings might I get a little bit loud. So I said, don't listen to my words. Just know that something happened when you hurt my feelings. Some of you are thinking, really? Somebody can hurt your feelings? Yes, only her, okay? But then I might get loud sometimes when my feelings are hurt. And she's like, why are you all mad at me? I said, I'm not mad. You hurt my feelings. So learn each other. Learn how to read each other.
So, Rabbi, this has to do with last night's Torah study. In chapter 21, verse 10, it talks about when you go out to fight against your enemies, and Yahweh, your Elohim, shall give them into your hand, shall take them captive. Who are the enemies he's talking about there? Is it necessarily going to be somebody other than the other tribes?
Okay, look, remember, they're about to cross the Jordan. They're going to be dealing with enemies. Okay? He's saying, look, understand that when you go forward, you're going to end up in these battles. You're going to have people that are going to be not thrilled with you coming in and all these kind of things. And so there's going to be battles. He says, look, so when you fight against your battles, know that Yahweh, your Elohim, shall give them into your hand and you shall take them captive. Okay? Because they're going into the land. The land is already occupied. Okay? And so they were going to have to deal with some of these things. Does that answer the question?
Well, no, that's the preface to my question, because the next verse talks about seeing a woman fair of form, and she'll delight in her and take her for your wife. But doesn't this conflict with Deuteronomy 7:3, where it talks about not intermarrying with the folks that you're putting to the ban?
Okay, so there's one thing about now here in 21, I don't think it's talking here about the ban, it's just talking about some battles, okay? So what's going on here is it's saying, look, because when you put under the ban, you're killing everybody. You're wiping out everything. It's a complete, scorched earth thing, right? You're just wiping the whole thing out. Here, it's saying you're gonna have some battles, and as you have some battles, there's gonna be women, I said this last night in the study, there's gonna be women that are now alone, without a husband, without fathers, without brothers. The men have all been killed in the battle, and they're going to need to be covered, and you might find one desirable as a wife. Okay, they're saying, look, it doesn't matter, you just think she's hot and stuff, whatever. I mean, that's not the spoils of war. However, you could be a gentleman, so to speak, if that's possible after you just murdered everybody. But anyway, but realize this woman needs covering, needs protection. And you find her appealing at the same time. So the whole point of Deuteronomy 21 is to say, let's see how serious you are about wanting to take care of her. Let's take away some of her prettiness. We'll shave her head and cut her nails and see, if it's more than just you thought she was pretty, okay? Does that help?
Well, it doesn't clear up what's put forth in chapter 7, where it seems to be you don't intermarry with those folks at all. So it's not okay in chapter 7 to have your sons and daughters intermarrying, taking them as wives, but it's okay to have a wife if you've conquered them. I don't get the distinction. Is one a wife in one respect in one case and not a wife in another?
Okay, so where's your context missing? Go back to chapter 7. What's the context of the do not intermarry? Intermarry with who?
Well, you're intermarrying with the people that have been put under the ban, completely put under the ban.
Wait. But who? Who's put under the ban?
The folks that are going in to conquer.
No, very specific people. Okay? He's saying just specific people. Says these people don't intermarry with. Okay, these specific people. He says because they're going to be led into this serving of the mighty ones. But he says, look, I'm going to tell you that the Hittites and the Girgashites and the Amorites and the Canaanites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, 7 nations greater and mightier than you. And when Yahweh your Elohim gives them over to you, smite them and put them under the ban completely and make no covenant with them and do not intermarry them. Okay?
All right, so as long as none of those folks are involved in what is going on in chapter 21, it's okay.
I'm guessing that way would stay consistent, okay?
Okay.
But he's giving very specific people here in chapter 7. All right?
Okay.
And he's also doing something different. Chapter 7 is talking about under the ban. In other words, don't save these people for that purpose of you wanting to be with them. Under the ban is wipe them all out, okay? Under the ban is not like putting yellow police tape around it and say, don't touch. I mean, it's wiping it all out, all right? And so there must be in 21 people that you're not wiping everybody out, you just happen to go to war with them. And in war, men die, women end up still around. That's always been the case. And so in that case, in whatever battle with those people that you did not go in to put under the ban, these 7 nations specifically mentioned here in chapter 7, then you would be able to then take them that way. All right? Is that better, Pete?
Yes, that's good. This has to do with John chapter 5, verse 25. Okay. And it says that time is coming and is already here. It's something like that. So if what I'm struggling with here is I know that Yahweh knows the beginning from the end, and that along with that, everything that is going to happen as far as Yahweh is concerned has already happened. So if the time is coming that's already here, doesn't that mean that when we die, we automatically go to where we're going to be in the final days? And time for us ceases to exist.
Again, context is the problem, okay? Because he's not talking about what you're saying. Listen to what he's talking about. He says in verse 24, right? Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in me, in him who sent me, possesses everlasting life. But you're not living forever yet. You possess this thing called everlasting life. And does not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. But you're not dead. But you were dead. You were dead in trespasses. We have other verses that say that. So we're talking about a future that, based on what you're doing, is either death or everlasting life. But hearing his words transfers you, if you start living them and doing those things, from death to life. So then in verse 25, he says, truly, truly, I say to you, the hour is coming and now is. In other words, there are those that are hearing my words now that are moving from dead to living, and there are people in the future that will hear my words and move from dead to living. He says, when the dead shall hear the voice of the Son of Elohim, and those having heard shall live. But it's not talking about people physically dead, okay? We're talking about people that have death in their future because of their understanding or lack thereof of things that they need to understand to have life, okay? That's what we're told in Ephesians. You were dead in your trespasses. Even though you were alive physically, you were living, breathing, doing your stuff. So it's not talking about an ultimate judgment here. It's saying, again, I said, those who believe in him who sent me possess everlasting life, and does not come into judgment later, but has passed from death to life now. And truly I say to you, the time is coming and is now when people are going to hear my voice and they're going to make that shift from dead to living. Anybody feel like you're living now where before you were dead? A change in your existence? Or you went from existing to living? Okay, does that make sense, Pete?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right, almost all problems are solved by context. What is being talked about? Okay, what is the point? The point here is not about people actually after they have finished living this physical life. It's about while they're in this physical life, they are laying up for themselves either death or everlasting life, which is what Romans 2 says. When Paul says, you're going to be judged according to your works, some to everlasting life. What Yeshua is simply saying is you already possess that potential by hearing him and believing in him the one who sent him, okay? You now possess the potential for. You also possess the potential just for death. Based on your choices, you have one or the other, according to your works, according to Romans 2.
All right, got a quick question for you on the past teaching on HaSatan. My question is, if HaSatan is working for Elohim, why was he cursed in Genesis if that was his job, if that was his role?
Okay, so it's not that he's working for, he doesn't understand that's his job, okay? So he's not doing it knowing it's his job. It's just that Yahweh understands what basically at this point the nature of Satan is and finds that to be somewhat useful when at least given a limited and restricted access to you, okay? So he's just being set free to do the nonsense he wants to do within that limited, restricted, kind of capacity, and that serves the Father's purpose. It's not like he understands his job is to come and mess with us, okay? Does that help?
Yeah, that does help. Now,
in his deluded mind, he thinks he's just doing whatever he's doing, okay? In his deluded mind, all right.
Okay then, can I ask a second question?
Sure.
All right, kind of go on what Mr. Lamb was saying, with the whole taking of a wife of, after battle and this, that, and the other. Wouldn't that not be unequally yoked?
Well, it depends on if she comes under him and then submits to him and his, just like Ruth would have said, your people are my people, your God, my God. So it's only unequally yoked if she doesn't come under. But you gotta understand, society in those days was very different than today. So there should have been the understanding, if you're combining chapter 7 with chapter 21, that she can't be pulling him towards her gods. She's got to, if he's going to take her as wife and protect her, and again, she would probably desire this to some degree, otherwise she would be at high risk of all kinds of terrible things in those days, okay? That she would come under and be equally yoked, okay? So so I think there's more to it than is limited in the information we just get in these verses, to address a large topic like that in just a few verses.
So only if she is willing to submit to him, then they can go through that process.
It doesn't say that. I'm just going to guess that would make sense. Because again, there should be counsel, right? So if somebody was counseling with me, and this does happen where people want to marry somebody that is not in the walk, my counsel is always, you need to be equally yoked. As a matter of fact, your sister, when she married somebody in the walk but under a different leadership, okay, I said, look, you're either going to have to go under him or you're both going to come under me. I'm not going to work with you being split. And then they both decided, with Jonathan and them, but she came under me, okay? But that was their choice. I said, look, I don't care who you go under, but to be equally yoked, even in the walk, you should have an authority that you both submit under, okay? So even your sister's situation was kind of similar, all right?
Right. Okay, perfect. That's everything for me.
So I'm in California, and I just had a question. I just wanted to make sure that I was doing it according to Scripture. So when Yahweh pops your bubble, that first tithe that you do, does that include that first year? Does that include the second tithe as well, or just the first tithe?
All right. I think, let me use this word appropriately. You know that when we use the word grace from a financial point of view, like a credit card will give you a 30-day grace period to start making your payments and you're not being charged interest, right? They call that a grace period. So I think Abba uses a grace period, not using the word grace like Christians do. I'm just saying a period of transition where while you're moving in the right direction, there's a little bit of time to get there. Little bit of time, not like 10 years, okay? So if your finances are not able to handle 3 tithes by the 3rd year or 2 tithes right away in the 1st year, he wants you to do the best you can to start. So you would start making an effort to do the first one. Maybe you don't even have the ability to do the whole first one, at least start giving something with the goal of working towards giving the first one. When you're able to do the first one, add the second one. When you're able to do both of those on the 3rd and 6th years, add the 3rd one, okay? So there is, I believe, a transition period that allows for you to be moving in the direction. But remember, he's always looking at you through Deuteronomy 8:2. Where's your heart? Is your heart to do it, or is your heart to just avoid doing it? Okay? Like, let's say, for example, you're new and you realize the Sabbath is something you can't work on, and you have a job that requires you to work on Saturdays. I don't think I would encourage you to quit your job as soon as you realized about Shabbat. However, I would want you to make every effort to fix that problem quickly. Either get your boss to allow you not to work Saturday or go get a different job. Now, if we're having the same conversation like a year or two later, then you didn't really put enough urgency on it. But I don't think it's so urgent that you immediately go to your boss and quit your job, okay? But I think you should have a few months to make the effort to go find something. And that's, Abba wants to see you making the effort. Everything's about effort, okay? Forget about whatever Christianity said, it's all about effort, okay? And so don't feel like you have to go from 0 to perfect, because you're not gonna get to perfect anyway. You're gonna make the effort to go to perfect. But you don't have to go from 0 to that the first day, okay? Do everything you can right away, and anything that you can't, work towards so that you can. Does that make any sense? Okay, like certain things you could do right away. You can stop eating the stuff you shouldn't eat. That's easy enough to do, all right? Oh, but I got all this terrible stuff in my house. Okay, so just throw it out. You don't have to eat it, okay? I know people feel like, but I spent the money on it. Well, you already spent the money on it. The money's gone. So now you got to put it in your body, which you shouldn't, just because you spent the money on it. Give it away, do something, throw it out. Don't eat it, okay? That you could do right away. There's lots of things you could do right away. I'm gonna talk to some people right now, really get in your face, sorry. Some of you listening to me right now are living with somebody of the opposite sex and you're not married. And you know better and should know better and need to fix that. I can't tell you how many people call us up, come in for counselings, whatever appointments, and they're just with somebody and they're not married. You can fix that right away. Okay? You need to stop doing that. There's things you can do right away. Some things you can't do right away because you put yourself in such a terrible place, like quitting your job. Okay? But I don't want you to say things like, well, Abba provided me with a job and he wouldn't provide me with a job that no, he didn't provide you with that job. Okay? It's like a conversation I had this week with a guy who said, well, Abba provided him with his wife. I said, the wife that you're now 5 months estranged from and she's moved out and wants to divorce you. So let's be careful that we give Abba credit for things when they don't end up actually working right. You can say it looks like it, it seems like it, but the fruit will show it. Okay, you're spinning it in your own head because the person's like, my wife's been gone for 5 months with my son and whatever, and I'm like, okay, well. Now, if the person's watching, well, I didn't name any names and nobody knows who you are, okay? But it's for the benefit of everybody to understand. This is not the way it actually works. So let's be careful that we're not going in that direction, okay? Did that help, Edwin?
Yeah, so last year I realized that I was supposed to do the tithe. So the cycle ends after Shemini Atzeret. So I would start the second tithe after that feast, right?
Well, you should be starting the count at the beginning of the year closest to when you figured all this stuff out. What I mean is this. If you found out about tithing like just now, okay, do the first tithe right away. If you can afford to do that, start second tithing and counting your 3-year cycle starting after this year, Shemini Atzeret, okay? Okay, so next month. If somebody's just finding out about this stuff in, say, December, well, the much closer year is the one that just ended. So I would count that year as the first year, as far as your 3-year count. You're gonna start the first tithe as soon as you know about tithing, if you can afford to do that, okay? You're gonna start the second tithe as soon as you find out about it, if you can afford to do that. You're gonna still need it to keep feasts. So there's no place to say you should wait to do any of this stuff. The third tithe doesn't happen until the 3rd year anyway. So it's really a matter of what year you start counting as year 1. Quite frankly, I don't care. If you push it forward when you should have pushed it backward, he knows what you're doing, okay? Trying to avoid having it come up sooner, all right? That's a whole different problem, okay? A whole different problem. All right, did that make sense?
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi.
Hi, Rabbi. I'm in New Hampshire.
Okay, wonderful. So what can we do for you?
I have 2 questions. The first one has to do with the command about carved images. I just wanted to know if I'm breaking the command by having like photos, paintings, stuff like that, and like toys for my kid. They know what are animals. Like, I just want to make sure that that's not exactly what he means. And if you have a teaching that goes over that, if you could just point.
I don't, but it is mentioned in many places that we've done in the Torah portions as we cover those verses. The main thing is this, okay? If the thing you have, okay, whatever it is being used for or ever was used for worship of any sort, then it's a problem, okay? So like, for example, my father was a big collector of bulls because he worked on Wall Street. And so none of the bulls that he had were ever prayed to or worshiped. He just had a collection of them. I have an aunt and her big deal was penguins. And she had a huge collection of penguins. She never prayed to them. Nobody else ever prayed to them, okay? So it's really not just carved images. That's art, okay? Art is, you can have mountains, you can have trees, you can have animals. All these things that God created is art, unless it was used in some sort of worship of a God, okay? So your children can have all that stuff and all that, that's all fine, okay?
Perfect. All right. And my next question is, a few weeks ago, there was people asking about what happens with babies when they die. And so I just had a question from 2 Samuel 12:23, how you interpret that verse. So it's the verse where David, after his child dies, he says, "But now he is dead. Why should I fast? Am I able to bring him back again? I'm going to him, but he does not return to me." And so what is David saying when he says, "I'm going to him, but he doesn't return to me"? Do you have
Okay.
Anything on that?
All right. So first of all, children don't get a free pass straight to the kingdom, because that would go against everything we see in Scripture that says you have to walk this out. However, I believe that everybody that exists as a living being gets an opportunity to live and walk this out. So a child that didn't get that opportunity, I believe, gets one in the millennium at the very minimum, okay? Where they get to then walk this out. So what David is saying is, I won't see that child again until we're both in that same place. All right, that child now is waiting for the kingdom, just like anybody else that died is waiting for the kingdom, okay? Or at least waiting for the millennium. And so I think that's what David was saying. Does that help?
Yes, thank you, that's it.
Okay, we have to understand, and this is really good context-wise, all right? There are things that when we look at Scripture, we have to ask the question, if this thing, if I'm interpreting it a certain way, does it mess up other things that I've already known to be true? Okay, so wondering what happens to, say you have a child, the child has something that happens right when they're born and they don't last very long, a couple of days or maybe a year or two, just very little bit of life, okay? What happens to that child? Well, it can't be anything that undermines the rest of the plan. So whatever happens to that child has to be inside of the plan. That was for everything else that we understand, okay? And so it seems to me that everything in the plan is about seeing us make choices. That child clearly didn't have that opportunity. So that child, I don't believe, just like everybody else on the planet that has not had this word exposed to them right now, I don't think they're all doomed. That's Christianity talk. Christianity says because we don't go out there and share this with everybody, they're all doomed. That's ridiculous. But that's what they teach, isn't it? Okay? I know people that were semi-suicidal as Christians because they felt like people were going to be doomed to hell because they didn't go out there and share enough. They literally were depressed to that point. I was like, oh my gosh, what an awful teaching. Okay? None of that depends on you. None can call people, only the Father draws them. Okay? It says none come unless the Father draws them. Not none come unless you go out there and do something. Listen, if it all depended on us, it's already screwed. Okay? We're not that good at anything. Let's be humble about that. We're just not that good at anything, okay? So he's not depending on us for the bigger picture. He's depending on you to deal with you, okay? He's depending on you to grow into and transform into his image. That's the only thing he's looking for there. So let's just kind of keep that in mind, that when we have something come up, whatever solution is to the thing that comes up, make sure it doesn't conflict with other things. That's kind of what Pete was trying to balance and Naaman was trying to balance a little bit. Well, if it says this, what about this? How does that match up or does it conflict? That's good questions to ask. And then if you don't know how it actually works, then it's good to ask a question of somebody that it's their job to have answers like that, which would be me in this case, right?
The question is, like last week, Yeshua was talking about staying in the moment and not looking behind in the past, or looking forward to the future, but staying in the moment. And my question, according to the Torah, how should parents and children facing, say, disability, abandonment, or hardship respond when parental alienation occurs? Like, what are the mitzvot and practical steps for maintaining honor and connection when family bonds are being threatened?
This is a good question. It's a very tough situation that you find yourself in, and many do find themselves in. I don't know how to put this. Maybe put it in a Yeshua-like way, like when Yeshua said, who is my mother, who is my father, who's my brother? And he pointed to the brethren there and not the actual family members. Okay? Stop needing blood family members to be what they're not. Stop needing them to be what they're not. It's good to want them to be. You have a sister, you want her to be your sister properly. You have a parent, you would love them to love you like a proper parent should. Okay, you have a child, you'd like them to love you like a proper child should. But stop needing that to happen because it's not gonna happen, right? With the ones that you already know that's the way it is, and they're treating you in some disrespectful, abusive way, accept that and stop needing it to be them being that role. Go find people that actually care about you that could be in that role, okay? You're suffering because you're needing it to be them, okay? That's really where it comes from. You know, you crave and you do not have. That's one of those things that we read in Scripture, right? That's one of the reasons we have such problems. We crave, we desire, and we don't have. But your desiring is you want it to be that person. But that person is not going to give you what you want. You're either going to suffer or you're going to be okay and move on. I know it sounds simple enough, but it's hard to do. But that's what you have to do. You're going to have to accept the reality and move on, okay? Look, most of us are old enough to have had somewhat of an experience with this. I'm going to talk about it from a somewhat different point of view. If you are, let's say at least 30 plus, 20 something plus, you have had somebody you desired in your life that you did not get. And you had to accept that. And for some of you, it was hard. We call those crushes, right? Because you wanted them and they didn't want you and you got crushed. But you had to move on. That's a lot easier to do with some strange person that you happen to be attracted to and you desired, as opposed to someone who's a family member, and there's always going to be a family member, okay? And so you desire that proper loving relationship with a mother, a father, a sister, a brother, a child, whatever it is. It's hard to accept that it's just not coming. But you've done it before. You know how to do this. You had to get past the emotional craving of this person you're never going to have. It's hard, but you had to do it. I've done it. Everybody's done it. Everybody's had at some point in their lives, especially going back to teenager, somebody that you were like, but it never bore any fruit. They didn't have the same about you. They looked at you like, really? Okay. You're looking at them like, wow. They're looking at like, no way. All right? And other people have looked at you the same way. They've looked at you like, oh, and you're like, no way. You had to get over that. With family members, it's really harder. But it's the same thing, though. You have to be able to let it go. You have to accept the reality that they are not going to likely be. At the moment, they're not. Remember you just said about being in the moment versus the past or the future. In the moment, they are not what you want them to be. Likely in the future, they still won't be. People really don't change all that much. It takes major trauma to usually get someone to decide to flip and change. It takes a lot of suffering to make somebody make a big change. And that's not necessarily you're the one to cause the suffering. Abba will allow or cause those things when he wants to. But likely they are going to continue to treat you the way they're treating you. So you need to accept that that's the reality, create your proper boundaries, and stop needing it to be them. Okay, Ernesto, does that help?
Yes, I wanted to ask another question, but I wanted to just say, with like the teaching that we had last week, like really the weirdest thing, because I've read through that maybe a few times, but to not have somebody help you understand what is actually being said. And then with regards to my question right now, it's one of those things where inside my mind was telling me is that I really needed to hear another man kind of explain that out. Because talking about emotions, it's hard to stay aware of now what's going on. Like you were saying, if you're distracted by, something that's pulling you away. So I want to say thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
And, all our past conversations, and including recently, it's just more about having a better understanding and being aware of what the other person is saying or doing. And so, authentically, I don't know how it comes across to you or to anyone else, but it's one of those things where I just say, well, I'm feeling more aligned with the way, like if you're unsure about something, it's best to come to you and ask you about something.
Yes.
And, we talked about some of that last night. And so I guess it's one of those things when you get caught up with family, and because I'm of Jewish background, and my family and all that. They say things. What you were saying to the young man just a little bit ago about being aligned. Thank you for saying what you said yesterday.
Okay.
Because I think my question is leading to is just that Zebulon and me, we're doing everything we can, and everything that I learn, I tell him when I have the opportunity to tell him. But going forward as men, especially under your covering, under Abba's covering and leadership, is sometimes, I guess this might sound like a stupid question, I don't know, but when you're looking up to somebody, you want to make them proud. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so for me, I feel like I'm always the black sheep or something like that. And it's not like I want to be like, get affirmations or anything like that. But I did say yesterday, hey, I want to understand more. I want to, where you're at, I mean, I don't know if I want to be there because I probably have stage fright and anxiety, but I want to get past all of that. You know what I mean? Because I want to be aligned with my rabbi, and I want to have an understanding of things. So maybe that will come in the future because we're today. But I hope you can understand where my question is coming from. It's just I want to be more in that realm instead of having all these other things distract me. Because I find that when, like the teaching last week, when I'm inculcating that into my life and doing those things, then I do better. And it's peaceful, and it's like soothing when you and I can have those conversations. But rather than me saying anything more, do you understand where my question is coming from?
I understand everything you said. I don't think you asked the question, but that's okay. But you made a lot of statements, which is fine. I know what you're trying to say. I appreciate what you're trying to say. The challenge is, and this is for all of you men, you want to be a man? Get your emotions under control, okay? You want to be a man? Stop being so needy. It's okay to want, stop needing so much, okay? You shouldn't need. You're a provider, not a needer, not a receiver. You're supposed to be providing, okay? So I'm not picking on Ernesto. I'm saying we got a lot of men like this that are just not understanding that you can't provide if you're always the one needing, okay? People need me, okay? I don't need to be walking around to people that need me and being needy and then they have to help me, okay? I'm not saying that I should not need any help. I should want help and go seek counsel, etc. But it's this need, okay? Needing, again, with this wants, needs disconnect that we talked about from time to time, that's also the problem. When you want something and turn it into a need when it should just be a want, then it becomes a problem when it doesn't happen. It's okay to want it, but if you need it, now it's a problem. Okay, it's just like you need to breathe. So if I covered your mouth and nose and didn't let you breathe, you would have a problem because you need to breathe. But if you start treating a want like a need, now we got a problem, potentially, okay? Because you're gonna throw the kind of fit, same kind of fit you throw if I covered your mouth and nose, you couldn't breathe. You'd eventually throw a fit, making sure you try to get rid of me off of you so you can breathe, right? And so you have to understand that we have to deal with this personal, individual problem with wants and needs. Okay? And I don't have a problem with the ladies being somewhat needy because the men are supposed to provide, but you should also eventually, so you could be more useful to other people, be less needy also. Learn to take care of yourself. Learn to ask for help when you need it, when it's appropriate. I mean, this is the balance in terms of growing up, okay? Okay? An adult should be able to take care of themselves generally, all right? That's being an adult. Remember I said that one of the ideas of adult is being fully responsible for all aspects of your life. That's what an adult is, all right? Which means that you go get the help if you need it, but you go and say, hey, I need some advice, I need some guidance, whatever it is, and you go seek it. I ask for people's guidance on a regular basis in areas that I know I need some information about, whatever that may be. I don't ask as much as I used to. That's called growing up, all right? Because once I got those answers and started implementing them, I learned that I didn't need to keep asking. Okay? If you find that you keep asking the same questions over and over again, one of two things is probably happening. Either A, you're asking the wrong person, so you're not getting the information you need, or B, you're not listening. Okay? That's only two choices. Either you're getting bad information, you're asking the wrong person, or you're not listening. You shouldn't be asking the same questions over and over again. I mean, if you got the answers that are the answers, then you should just be implementing them and not need to keep asking. Or if you keep asking because the answers you got don't work, well, then you're asking the wrong person. Own that, which means that you are still to blame. Either you need to choose to ask somebody else, which is still your fault, or you got to start listening, okay? And then you have to own that.
Okay, so today during zone, I think it was last night, they were asking about mixed seeds, and you had said something about like this is concerning fruit. So if I can get this correct, we can eat fruit that is mixed and vegetables that are mixed, or no, we can't?
You can, okay? We're not talking about that problem. These things naturally mix with each other if they happen to grow near each other. Okay, you get hybrids naturally happen without people forcing the issue. We're staying away from genetically modified, where we're now taking animal DNA, mixing it with vegetables and fruits and things to make them last longer, whatever they're doing to tinker with stuff, all right? So if you were to take a fruit and graft it in and actually have it interact with another fruit and it still becomes another fruit, that's something that's not going to cause a problem. That's something that happens all by itself anyway. We can speed up the process on purpose. It's when we start to make that fruit altered in a way that it would never naturally do, okay? Does that help, Annabelle?
Yes, sir. I have a couple of other questions.
No, go ahead. I don't have that full of room. As a matter of fact, you're the only one in it at the moment, so.
Okay. So this is something that I've had since I was 5 or 6 years old. I had my, I could see things before they happened, and sometimes in dreams and sometimes while I'm awake, I can see stuff that is happening before it happens, and then it does happen, it comes to pass. I wanted to know if this is part of fortune telling. My grandmother was a fortune teller, and come back from that type of history, but I'm not practicing it. It just happens to me.
Yeah, no, look, I understand.
Help me on that?
Yeah, okay, so look, it's one thing to actively do something and then, of course, turn it into a business and other people are relying on you. It's another thing to have something you have no control over that happens, okay? So, I mean, you're not taking out a deck of cards and trying to read them. You're not looking at tea leaves or some other thing. You're having something that just happens to you. You become aware of something, and it turns out what you're aware of ends up happening. It hasn't happened before you became aware of it. Okay, if that's the case, it's not something that's good or bad, it just is, all right? So you're not doing anything inappropriate because you're not doing anything. It's just happening, okay? Now, if you were using it in some way to try to share information with people to help them avoid or do or whatever, that would be a different thing. Now you're doing something that's more in the area of divination and fortune telling and these kind of things that we shouldn't be doing, okay? So you're fine.
Okay, that's great news. Also, during the Satan teaching, you had mentioned a lot of this is pertaining to our being. There was a study that I had done a while back before I started watching you, and was reading Revelation where beasts came out and stuff like that, and the way that this was translated in that study was our being during end time. What is our being going to be like? And you had mentioned that you can be an adversary, you can be all of these different things. So if our being is like that when we pass or when it comes to end, how would that come out?
All right, you're asking me stuff there's no real good information about, right? This is all future stuff. I stay away from, sort of eschatology and what's going to happen in the future and that kind of thing. If it's in the book of Revelation or in some of the prophets, especially like Ezekiel, right? Most of what you read, a good chunk of it is artistic metaphor picture language, okay? So nothing in it is meant to be taken literally, although there are some literal things that are supposed to be, I guess, gleaned out at some point, or when, after things happen, we go, oh, that's what it was talking about, type of thing, okay? But the imagery that's being used in Revelation is simply imagery. Now, we may come to say, oh, as things play out, I now see what that was talking about with this imagery that was being used, okay? Oh, these kind of things that are being described, that sounds kind of like modern day, fighter planes, or it sounds like nuclear bombs, or it sounds like something. Well, it doesn't say that. There's imagery being used. So when you're dealing with something like that, it is really hard to know for sure what's being said actually, like what is really being trying to be said. So a lot of this stuff is going to be, look, some terrible things are coming, be ready for it. And when it does come and it happens, you'll remember these words and say, oh, that's what it was talking about, all right? It's going to be more likely along those lines. So I'm probably the last person that is going to be willing to step out and claim what I think those things mean, all right? Unless at some point he gives me and says it's time for the stuff to be revealed. That hasn't happened to me yet, okay? So I don't have any better understanding of the imagery than you do, or anybody else does. Maybe less, maybe more, but I don't feel confident that I have any real clear understanding of what is literally being described in those places, because I don't think any of it was meant to be understood literally, okay? When we're talking about the 4 horsemen, the horses, I don't think we're gonna see anybody riding a horse. I guess we could, but that's not what's really being talked about there. Okay? It's imagery to paint a picture about a point that the Father's trying to make, right? And so we have to just be very reluctant to take things in a very literal way, okay? Now, things that have already happened, we can say, okay, it happened, and they're telling us what happened, okay? So was there a flood? Yeah, there was a flood. Now, are there other metaphors you can get out of that? Sure. I mean, we've often talked about the wilderness that the Israelites walked through is like a wilderness experience that we walk through. But did they walk through one? Yeah, it says they did, okay? But when something that hasn't happened yet is painted in imagery, all right? Unless the imagery is explained, like for example, you have Daniel's vision of this statue, and then it's somewhat explained, okay? But unless it's explained, which nothing in Revelation is really explained, we are left with imagery. And with imagery, we're left with a lot of questions, a lot of things that we don't understand quite.
The next question I have is, when people see us from our past life and they refuse to see any changes in our life because they want to keep looking at the past, do I need to do anything to try to help them understand that I'm not the same way, or just leave it alone? Because I'm not going to be able to change anybody's mind about how they see me. Right. Yet I know that I've been doing better than what I've done before I even came into this walk, even before then. There's been so many changes.
All right, so basically, when you say past life, I don't want people think on the reincarnation in past lives. You're talking about the old you before the walk, okay? Or before you've made some changes in your life, okay? So that being said, because all of us should have an old you that you're not anymore. Even regardless of the walk, it's just the old you, then all of a sudden you realize some things were dumb and you stop doing them, right? So there's an old you. Even prior to anything vertical, you just figured it out on your own. Doing these things is dumb, so you stop doing them. Problem is, you're gonna have people in your life that remembered you or lived with you when all that was going on and not gonna believe that you're different. It will take time for them to see that you've actually changed. Can you convince them? Not with your mouth, like by using words to convince them. Over time, you might convince them by them watching and witnessing that you're different, okay? Now with your mouth, you might convince them also if like you had a certain way of speaking that was rude and obnoxious, this, that, and the other thing, and you stop speaking that way, that might help convince them. But it's the actions and behavior, not your words, that's gonna convince them, right? But if you have a relationship that's close enough, you may come up to that person and say, look, I know you believe me to be this way because I always was. I'm not denying it, I was like that. But I'm gonna ask you to give me a chance to show you that I'm not that anymore. So just watch, observe, give me that opportunity, okay? I know I haven't given you a reason up to this point to believe me, but I really have changed, all right? And so you can ask for that, but there's nothing, you're right, there's nothing you can do to make them see it. You can't make them believe you, you can't make them, trust that you actually have made these changes, okay? All right? So Annabelle, there's nothing to do there. You're gonna just have peace with the fact that some people you've burned some bridges with, whatever you did, and they're not gonna give you that chance, all right? All right, anything else?
Okay, so no matter how many years have gone by, it's still not gonna change.
Everybody's got people in their lives that no matter what
years.
you do, they're not gonna give you that chance, okay? We all have people like that. Everybody have people like that in your life that no matter what you do, they're just not gonna give you that chance? It's just, sadly, it's just the reality of it, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, but I want you not to make the same mistake that, say, Ernesto would have been making or some other people would have been making, which is stop needing those people to see you the new way. Go find people that see you the way you are now. You don't need them to see it, okay? You might want them to see it, but you don't need them to see it, okay? Well, I don't like that they see me the old way. Well, they're gonna see you whatever way they want. You can't control that. That's just the reality of it, okay? Again, this problem with needing something. There are plenty of people, if they meet you now, don't even know who you used to be. Don't know how you used to be. So go be with them. The ones who are gonna love you the way you are now. Because if somebody's gonna only love you or treat you or not like you because of the past and not see you the way you are now, why do you need to spend time with them? Why do you need them in your life? Okay? They're acting like HaSatans. They're adversarial, they're causing stumbling blocks, they're hindering you in whatever way because they don't want to accept and see you the way you are. They're only gonna see you the way you were. All right, well then those are bridges that might have been burned and you can't really fix.